Hi, my name is Justin Taylor. I am a professional meditation teacher and tutor with Ivy Tutors Network. I'm here to talk to you for the next 30 minutes about anxiety, a very hot topic, I know, and what to do about it for yourself and for your students. I'm going to be covering how to deal with anxiety in the body, in the mind, and also in our life habits. So in these three areas. The first question is, what is anxiety? Very basically, anxiety is the body's emotional response to worry about the future. That's basically what it is. Worry about the future and how we physiologically manifest that. You may well know the symptoms of anxiety: a racing mind, a racing heart, increasing temperature, dry mouth. One of the things that's very difficult about anxiety is that it cuts off our ability to process. You need a calm mind to process. And for tutoring students, and for most teenagers in general, this is a real issue. Anybody who is preparing students for high-stakes standardized tests like the SAT or the ACT knows very well that anxiety is the #1 killer when it comes to those tests. But we can also be facing this issue in other areas with their students. Maybe they're really frustrated, they're not understanding something you're teaching them, a certain math topic or a grammar rule, or they're just really overwhelmed with the number of things they have to do at school, or the pressure they feel to achieve, to get into a good college, or maybe even there are things in their life that are stressing them out, conflicts with parents, conflicts at school. Children's lives, teenagers' lives can get really stressful. So when we address anxiety with our students, we're doing a lot for their performance in the area that you are helping them with, but you're also helping them improve their lives in a 360-degree way. I want to here caution that we are not therapists, we are not social workers, we're not here to save our students from their stress. We're here to give them tools to empower them to address them more skillfully, and what they do is really up to them. So know that your job is to help them improve in a test or a subject at school or something else that's scholastic, and we're using a 360-degree approach to help achieve that goal. What can we do with our students to address anxiety? Now, I like to say that anxiety takes two things to survive. Here we go, two. One is to be disembodied, and the other is to believe things that aren't true. So I'm going to talk about how to get into the body, to get into the present moment, and then I'm going to talk about how to deal with believing things that cause stress, which usually are not true. So, like I mentioned, anxiety is worrying about the future. When we are living in the future, we are not present in our bodies. We are not in the present moment. So I want to give you a series of exercises right now that you can teach to your student in the course of your tutoring curriculum with them. These are things you can share to start a tutoring session, to get your student more present, more in the moment with you. This is also something you can do if they're experiencing a lot of anxiety in the midst of a lesson, and also things that they can do to help them get calm and greater performance on test day, for example. So there's a series of circumstances you can try this out in, and you can say to your student, if they're going through some anxiety, you can say to them, hey, I notice you are feeling a lot of anxiety. That makes a lot of sense to me that you would be feeling all this because of all of the things going on. You could mention maybe they're told you about some pressures they're feeling, or you might have heard about what might be going on in their life. Rather than tackle those problems with them, which is more, again, of a mental thing, say to them, I know some anxiety hacks that can really reduce this feeling you're having so that you can be more present and more focused on the work we got to do. Would you be willing to try some of these? They've really helped me. This is really important. It's really helpful to get the students' consent to bring in stuff like this because they didn't hire you to help them manage their stress, right? So this is somewhat new, and so telling them, hey, I want to share with you some stress resilience techniques, I think it takes a bit of a moment of opt-in, right? Here are 5 things that you can learn for yourself and then teach to your student. The first one is to simply check in with your body. This is not necessarily an exercise, but it can do a lot to help a student become aware of the anxiety they are feeling and to release it, and help their brain receive more oxygen and a greater sense of well-being so that they're more able to work on the scholastic issue that you're helping them with. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala. It is sometimes called the lizard brain or the primitive brain. It's the part of the brain that governs fight or flight response. And all of these exercises are about helping us get out of the fight or flight response and into the relaxation response. The relaxation response is what the body does when it feels present and safe. So the first thing, like I mentioned, is the body check-in. What you want to ask your student is the way you are sitting comfortable to you? Do you feel like it's giving you energy? The first thing you want to check in is, how are your feet positioned? I recommend that you get your feet flat on the floor in front of you, almost as if your feet are like stable legs of a chair, flat on the floor in front of you. If you're sitting with your legs crossed or somehow underneath you or behind you, it can add to a sense of disembodiment and tension. When the body is stressed, it tends to want to curl up and go into something like this, or cross your body like this. These are all self-protection things. These are stressful to hold, and they take a lot of energy. So when we do a body check-in, it's sort of like we are unpretzeling the body from its stress response postures. The next thing to check in about is your hands. Where are your hands? I recommend that you place the hands palms down on top of the legs for a sense of grounding. Now, of course, when people are taking a test or studying and using their hands to write, this is not as possible, but if you take a break from those things to help ground you, get your hands palms down on top of the legs. You can also put the hands palms down on top of the desk or table. This is especially useful for cooling down the nervous system. If a person's very worked up and their anxiety is so high that they're getting really, really hot, putting hands on top of the table or desk can really cool you down. The next is to do a shoulder roll. This is really helpful for opening up the chest. Like I showed you earlier, when the body is stressed, it tends to collapse the upper body. The chest gets tight, it makes the shoulders come forward, and we go into physical self-protection mode. Now, why would we be doing this when we're stressed? Why are we doing this? Because, like I mentioned, anxiety is in the mind. It's thoughts about the future. I want to tell you a little bit more about this briefly before I go into the shoulder roll. The amygdala, like I mentioned earlier, that little nugget of brain on top of the brainstem that governs fight or flight response, this part of the brain cannot tell the difference between an actual physical threat and an imagined threat. So thoughts about the future are imaginary. And the amygdala responds to those threats by making the body go into self-protection mode. Fight or flight or freeze. This is like the freeze response, right? The shoulder roll is very helpful for disengaging the body from that response and therefore the amygdala from its fight or flight loop. Starting with one shoulder, you do this one shoulder at a time. Bring it forward as far as you can get it, then pull it up to your ear, then pull it back, and then let it drop. What we're doing is we're naturally opening the chest by moving our shoulders further back in their sockets. We're not popping the chest forward, we're not trying to squeeze the shoulder blades. We're naturally moving the weight of our shoulders further back, which helps the chest open, which actually helps the neck, shoulder, and upper back relax. So if you or your student has upper back pain, the chest is likely the culprit. This also helps breathing move further down into the belly. When we are in relaxation response, we breathe from the belly. And when we're in stress response, we breathe from the chest. Like I showed you earlier, this collapsed posture makes air and breathing go very shallow up in the chest area. So doing the shoulder roll can do a lot to help the body come out of that stress response, out of that stress posture, and be fully available and present. So the next thing I want to show you, which connects to what I just mentioned, the breath, is mindful breathing. This is something that I recommend doing after you've checked in with the posture. So I recommend teaching the posture check-in and mindful breathing both together as a combo when you show it to your students. Because it's very hard to do mindful breathing if you're sitting like this, right? Your breath is up here, you can't feel the breathing so well. So to do a posture modification and to the optimal sitting can really help with the breathing. So this is something that you can tell your student to use on breaks in between sections of a test if they're doing a standardized test, or even to start your tutoring session or in between parts of your lesson, or even like in the course of their day if they're needing to de-stress, they can do this as a way to do that. So once you've found your feet in your hands, rolled the shoulders, take a deep breath in through the nose as deep as you can, and then when you breathe out, let that release any tension or holding that's still in the body, almost as if it's like throwing it off like a suit of clothing that was too tight. So take a deep breath in through the nose. One more time. And one more. Awesome. I like to do that 3 times, but you can do it as many times as you need. For me, 3 gets that little extra edge of mindfulness and relaxation into the practice. But again, you can do this as many times as you need. The next practice builds on mindful breathing a little bit. It's called the zipper. In the zipper, you put your hands back to back like this. Now, watch me do this once before you do it yourself. You put your hands at the base of your upper body below the navel. And when you breathe in, you rise up the front of the body like this. And when you get to the chin, you open your arms and breathe out. All right, now you try it with me. Hands back to back at the base of the upper body, below the navel. Breathe in, rise up. And breathe out. Let's do it 2 more times. And one more. Why does this help? When we're in stress response in that collapsed posture, our energy is actually moving in the suboptimal direction. It's going counterclockwise. When we are in relaxation and doing well, our energy actually wants to move up the central channel and then out the outside of the body down. Sort of like water in a fountain, right? When we do the zipper, it reminds our energy which way it wants to move. And to pair that with the breath can really kickstart that energy moving in the proper orientation. The next is called bat wings. Bat wings is for moments when you or your student are experiencing a really high level of anxiety, like an anxiety attack, or just a fit of stress. What you do is you get your hands up like this, you make fists, and when you breathe out, you squeeze your arms forward like this. And you want to get the feeling of a stretch between the shoulder blades. Then you breathe in and open up toward the sky, stretching the chest. Okay, breathe out, do it again. Squeeze the arms, stretch that spot between the shoulder blades. Breathe in. Open up to the sky, stretch the chest. Breathe out. Stretch that spot between the shoulder blades. Breathe in, stretch the spot in the chest. Breathe out. Stretch that spot between the shoulder blades. One more time. And stretching again, the back. My Qigong teacher calls that spot between the shoulder blades the spot that solves 1,000 problems. It's a spot that, like the chest, accumulates a lot of stress, so to stretch it out can really help relaxation response. The last exercise I want to show you is a meditation, actually. It's called mindfulness. Normally, people think mindfulness or breathing meditation is meant to be done eyes closed, but in fact, you can do this eyes open anywhere you want. You don't have to even be sitting. The way it works is you rest your gaze on a point near you. If you're a student perhaps taking a test, you could use the tip of a pencil. You could use a point on the piece of paper you're looking at. You just rest your gaze there and you feel your body breathe. Breathe naturally. And if the mind wanders, bring your mind back to the sensation of breathing, especially down in the belly. This can almost be like a palate cleanser in between questions on a test or in between moments of your lesson, or even as a way to start a tutoring session to collect energy and focus. Okay, so those are the 5 ways to deal with stress and anxiety in the body. Now let's deal with stress and anxiety in our thinking. Like I mentioned earlier, anxiety is worrying about the future. One way to help put a hack into that is to question the stressful thoughts you or your student has about the future. For students dealing with pressure about college, good grades, performance on standardized tests, the future is big in their minds. A classic stressful thought a student might have is, I'm not going to get into a good school, or I'm not going to do well on the test. You can take that thought and do a short question process with your student to help them connect with reality some more. Like I said earlier, anxiety feeds on 2 things. One is being disembodied, so not being in the present, being in the future. The other is believing things that aren't true. So in this exercise, we look at the stressful thoughts that you or the student is having about the future, and we question them and then look at their opposites. When we bring in more evidence about reality, anxiety doesn't have a lot to eat. It can't really survive. It's like we're taking its food away. So, for example, let's say the thought is, I'm not going to do well on the exam. You could ask your student, is that really true? And let them answer yes or no. If they want to discuss it, just tell me yes or no. Is that really, really true? You're not going to do well. Can you know that for sure? Then ask them, do you notice what happens to you when you believe that's true? How do you react? What is that like when you think that you're not going to do well? Then let them respond, and there you can open up a little bit more. The next question is, what would it be like to not believe that? Who would you be without the thought you're going to do poorly on the test? Or not get into the good school? And again, let them talk a little bit and share with you and imagine with them what it could be like to believe or to not believe that you're going to do poorly. And in the last part of the exercise, you offer a turnaround. You take the original idea and you flip it around. Rather than doing poorly, you're going to do well. Okay, so when you turn that around, you're going to do well. Look for a real life example that supports that idea. Give me one real life reason that you're going to do well on the test. You could say, for example, the fact that you're tutoring means you're going to do well on the test. You could look to other examples like you do well in this subject in school, or you really want to do well and improve. You've scored X before and X today, and you're improving. You could also bring in the idea of the long game, that improvement takes time, and we are doing the steps necessary to gradually improve over time. You could also bring in, check how their scale of success is working. For example, sometimes students believe they have to get a perfect score or an A+. Rather than put that kind of pressure, you could say, do the schools that you want to get into really require you to get those perfect scores? Are you going to care 2 years from now what you scored on those tests or what you got in those classes? All of this can help bring the mind back into reality. Okay, so to summarize, the questions you can ask are, is it true? How do you react when you believe that it's true? Who would you be without believing it? And then turn it around for me. Give me some examples, real life reasons that support the opposite is true. So the last thing I want to cover in this is life habits. These are things that people can do to prevent anxiety from taking over before it starts. For me, the number one thing a person can do is to develop a meditation practice. Now, I'm a professional meditation teacher, and I have a lot of experience enrolling people into a personal meditation practice. I often teach it to my tutoring students. If you yourself are a meditation fan, you meditate already, I highly encourage you to share that with your students and make meditation a part of your tutoring curriculum. However, if you're new to this kind of thing, don't worry about it. It does take, I think, some personal experience with meditation to teach it to other people. You can use, however, any of those exercises I mentioned, sort of like a meditation, to start your sessions or turn around anxiety in the midst of your session. Other life habits I recommend talking to your student about are their sleep. Are they sleeping enough hours for them? Are they going to bed at the right time for them? It is not the same for everyone. Are they getting regular exercise? This has a lot to do with regulating the body's stress and relaxation cycles to get regular exercise. So helping them think about what they can do to help their bodies be active, really helpful. Also, creating some boundaries, helping them understand some boundaries between their schoolwork, happiness, and their identity wrapped up in their schoolwork, and their happiness in general. Can be a very helpful conversation. Are they doing things that are not about their success and performance in school that just make them happy? Do they have hobbies that are their own? Do they have friend groups where they really feel like their values are mirrored and they're acting on them together with these friends? You know, are they a part perhaps of communities of deep meaning, like a church or a volunteer group, or even like a reading club, things like that, where people come together in around a shared value? That can do a lot to help people feel a sense of belonging, which does a lot to stem anxiety. And then, of course, if there are conflicts in their life, what are they doing to put some boundaries around some of those relationships so that it's not preoccupying them in other areas of their life? So those are some life habit areas that you and your student could touch on. Again, I do recommend staying the tutor and not becoming the therapist or social worker. We are not saviors. We are there to give a boost to their academic goals, and addressing anxiety and stress is a part of that. So just be sure to not go too far. That's my tip there. If you do have any questions about this, please reach out to me. I'm happy to clarify or cover anything that you might be curious to know more about. Thank you for watching this video. I know it was a bit long, but I guarantee that if you and your students bring some of these practices into what you do together, it can do a huge amount of good. So thank you for watching. Be well.